Okay, so with that, we'll get started. So thanks a lot, everyone, for joining in for today's roundtable session. So we are going to talk about modernizing the campus IT and modernizing the hands-on lab infrastructure in the education space with Microsoft Azure. My name is Amit Malik. I'm part of Spectra Systems, and I'm joined by experts from Seneca College and Microsoft today for this discussion. And we have, a lot of wonderful things lined up today. So with that, we'll get started. So we'll start with a quick round of introduction. So I'm part of Spectra Systems. We are a solution provider for Microsoft Azure in the education space through our platform called Cloud Labs. And I'm responsible for the overall service delivery for Cloud Labs. And I will be moderating today's roundtable session. And I will pass over to David now. So David, will you take a few minutes to talk about yourself?
Hi and welcome. My name is David. I'm an academic program manager in one of our schools at Seneca College. Currently taking on a lead role here in the School of IT Administration and Security, where I'm eager to share with you how we're using Azure and Cloud Labs in our programs.
Wonderful. Todd, would you
Hello,
like
everybody.
to go next?
Yes, sir. Hello, everybody. I work with Seneca College at in the data center. I do support the Azure within our department, and I do support for the academic as well. And it's been quite a journey to get to where we're at today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Nancy?
Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Nancy Tudor. I'm the Education Partner Lead at Microsoft Canada. I'm responsible for working with our customers and helping them engage with partners such as Cloud Labs and solving some challenges that they might have and deploying their solutions. So happy to be here.
Perfect, perfect. Welcome you all to the roundtable discussion, and welcome everyone again. So before we get right into the questions and further discussions, just a few quick rules. So if you have any questions at any point of time, feel free to use the chat box to share your thoughts and questions, and we will get to them in the end. And throughout the session, do enjoy and let us know your comments and reactions and anything else that you might want to share. So our today's agenda is to basically discuss about how Seneca is using Azure for modernizing the campus IT and improving the impactful hands-on lab experiences that students can get in the education sector. And we are going to talk about a lot of Microsoft technologies and tools that are used and various challenges, use cases, and so on. So sit tight. It's a long journey, but it'll be a pretty interesting one. We'll go over a lot of challenges that are faced in real world. So with that, to start with, so I would like to start with a question for Nancy. So Nancy, how, like, from Microsoft perspective, how do you see the adoption of Microsoft Azure in the educational institutes in the recent years, and what are some of the industry trends that you are seeing in Canada and in general overall across the globe?
Great question. So what we're seeing is a massive demand for Azure and all our cloud services, both in higher ed as well as K-12. And so what some of the top 5 areas that we're seeing most of the cloud adoption in is, I would say, Teams, and that was primarily driven out of pandemic and so on. And then I would say remote labs or classroom labs, both digitizing physical labs and moving those virtually, but also incorporating cloud technology into the labs themselves, which we're going to talk a lot about today. Another area that we're seeing a lot of adoption is around security. So we're seeing a lot of our customers starting to adopt A5 security, both from for endpoint security and just security services, as well as data analytics. And I would say from an academic and research perspective, but also institutional reporting. So reporting using Power BI for things like HR, finance, student lifecycle management is another area that we're seeing a lot of momentum and adoption around. My apologies, I've got a little bit of a flu today, so I'm going to be taking a couple of breaks here and there for some water. I also think that when we think about student labs, there's really two scenarios, right? There's the academic labs, which we talked about, and I think some of the things that we're going to be talking at length today in the session is around how do we incorporate those labs or the cloud services into those labs for students. But the other scenario that a lot of institutions were also adopting quite a bit during the pandemic and still right now is the student labs that have other technologies like Adobe or AutoCAD, high GPU resources that are moving into the cloud. And so what we're seeing with that is better equity for students. So a Chromebook could access those resources and those labs. And I think that is super important. The great thing about that as well is that most of our institutions in Canada are licensed for A3, the A3 suite, which the virtual desktop, the VDI technology, is available to students. And so there's huge cost savings there. So that's in a nutshell what we're seeing from a cloud adoption point of view.
Wonderful one. Definitely with the E3 and education licenses, so you don't have to get to the remote desktop licenses anymore, and you can directly start with cloud-based VDI. So that is definitely like a great addition. So you talked about how pandemic impacted all of us and how teams came to the rescue basically. So I would like to ask Todd and David from Seneca, like how did COVID impact and the Seneca IT and the lab infrastructure in general, and how did you cope up with all the challenges that you came across?
You know what? Sometimes I think of these challenges as opportunities, right? One of the things that just shadowing on what Nancy mentioned, opportunities to expedite the use of collaboration tools like Microsoft Teams, not only for meetings within our organization, but also for hosting classes, right? Having classes where you have students joining in, sharing with them a join code, setting up your group with different channels to share all the different course materials. So, definitely opportunities like that. Obviously, a lot of our courses needed to be converted for online delivery. Our traditional in-person was no longer, and you'll see that across the board throughout the world is that, a lot of the courses being offered as online delivery, right? So we definitely had a lot of challenges with that, especially within the School of IT Administration and Security. A lot of our programs, we do have physical labs, and leaning on what Nancy mentioned earlier about virtualizing. We had to virtualize a lot of the labs, whether it's using a Hyper-V to set up virtual machines, and also leveraging the cloud in this case. So one example is setting up one of our labs using DevTest Labs. So I'm going to hand it over to Todd to talk a little bit more about how his team was able to provide that type of environment for us.
Yeah, thank you, David. When this did happen, of course, like it was very quick to action it, and I worked with a couple of professors in his department, David's department. They were very enthusiastic fellows, and we kind of fed off each other. And first of all, it was to define what they were trying to teach and how we'd actually deliver it using these services. And as David has suggested, we decided that we would go with DevTest Labs, right? And which was really good. So option for us, because we didn't want to begin using our production tenant at all for this. We created another tenant, an academic tenant, which we invited students to, and we worked together to create these two. In this case, the two different teachers with two different labs, DevTest Labs, invited the students, and the teachers or the professors themselves were able to develop these labs and work effectively in there to build. The students would actually build their environments and test their environments, and strictly a functionality labs. It wasn't so much of an administrative lab or a service labs. So that's why we chose to go with the DevTest Labs, and they were really effective. And as the semesters went on, we we developed these DevTest Labs even more so so they'd be more effective. And that's how it all started with the DevTest Labs for us. Yeah.
Perfect. So, moving forward, so starting with DevTest Lab, so moving forward, like today, like, what are some of the courses and use cases that you are sort of, using Azure for, and what are the other scenarios that sort of you are, addressing with Microsoft Cloud Platform, and basically starting with DevTest to, where is it today?
That's a great question, Amit. And you know what? I want to say that Seneca College is a leader in preparing students for industry. And with the increased demand of cloud skills, we recently introduced a new program, a grad certification program called Cloud Architecture and Administration. Now, within this program, of course, there's a number of different courses where we are using Microsoft Azure to help prepare our students for industry. So what are some of the use cases when we're looking at the Microsoft Azure? We're looking at services like virtual machines. I want to say virtual machines is probably one of the biggest services that we use, right? We're looking at virtual networks. How do we peer them? How do we communicate between virtual machines? Looking at load balancers, how we work with different virtual machines, scaling them, how load balancing can help us manage loads between the different servers, maybe they're web servers. Also securing our environment, perhaps using Azure Bastion as kind of like the jump box so that we can connect to our virtual machines in a secure way without having our public IP addresses on the internet. We also look at some of the other services like DNS as well. While we are still adopting Microsoft Azure in not just this program, but in some of our other programs, we do see there are a lot of opportunities, and shadowing what Nancy has mentioned about some other institutions, machine learning, AI for data analytics, right? These are, great services that we can leverage in some of the maybe non-IT related programs. And also down the road, we can expect that we might want to leverage this environment for hackathons. I can see that being in the roadmap in the near future.
Perfect. And as you mentioned, Azure Bastion service, for example, so security is something that it is always we have to take as a top priority. Even though we are talking about just sandbox environment here, it's sort of very important to make sure that we don't open up and the RDP or SSH to the internet and keeps on getting hammered. So that is definitely like a great point to make sure that we have the required jump box and tightening up firewall to make sure that even if they are sandbox environment, they are not sort of abused and they are not compromised, and the students learning never stops. So that's definitely a great point. And Todd, do you want to add anything to that with respect to how you are managing with the campus IT with Azure platform, or any other use cases that you might want to add?
Well, as far as these courses go that we've expanded to you being using Azure for that. Our biggest challenge to these, of course, with security is also cost management. So we had to build a structure for policies and governance, and of course the guardrails, right? Like anything else, you have to, to be in this business, you have to sort of manage that. And we did that through a series of policies to limit SKUs and so forth. We also use budgeting and action groups for alerts, and we would have to visit it. Now, after we built this infrastructure, it was again the challenges of how to deal with it when these folks sort of hit their budget limits, right? We have so we had to come up with some strategies for that, which I'm sure David will be able to emphasize on. And then, quite frankly, it was quite a challenge, but we've done pretty well so far. It was exciting.
Wonderful. So coming back to you, David, so just a couple of courses that you are currently using Azure for example, if you can name some of the courses where Azure is playing like a role.
You know what? That's a great question as well. So the current course, or I'll just introduce one of the courses in the Cloud Architecture and Administration program is called Introduction to Cloud Infrastructures. And this course gleans from the AZ900, where we are introducing cloud to our students. Now, our audience here for this cloud certification program is very diverse. And so we need to make sure that when we are delivering this course that we are accommodating for all the different needs of our students. We have students who are coming straight out of high school, or maybe they've obtained a diploma already and they want to do a deeper dive into the cloud space. And then we have other students who are coming from industry. They maybe have worked like Todd, maybe worked in a data center, and they've strictly worked with on-prem type of environment, and now they want to do a deeper dive in the cloud. So with that said, we introduce we in this particular course, we introduce Microsoft Azure. We look at the services, just like in the AZ900. We develop our labs gleaning from that. We do have some projects where the students are doing a deeper dive in some of the different services are being offered that might not be covered in the AZ900. So just kind of expanding on that offering that Azure has. And then we also have another course called ACS 730. Now, in this course, it's called Deployment Automation and Control Systems. I want to say this one is definitely a lot more challenging for students. We're looking at infrastructure as a code. This is we have industry professionals who are delivering this course, telling us, hey, you know what, in the financial sector, this is what is important. We need to be able to, yes, we do need to know how to, spin up a virtual machine. But when we're looking at the infrastructure, we want to be able to wrap this all up and deploy it as a code, have it fully automated, right? So that's very exciting for us in terms of delivering it. This is the start of our second semester delivering this program. So we expect the first batch of students to graduate at the end of August of 2022. So definitely, very exciting for us.
Absolutely, great to hear that. And as you mentioned, like AZ900 and other Microsoft certifications, so that's definitely great. Considering that these are the real industry certifications that basically makes you industry ready. So definitely moving towards into achieving those certification guidance is going to be helpful for students to be industry ready. So talking about industry readiness. So Nancy, why, from your perspective, why do you think institution needs to think differently about their curriculum, and why they should incorporate digital skills, and how do you think it would sort of impact that industry readiness aspect of it?
Yeah, great question. I think we all know that the demand for digital skills at a global level is huge. The World Economic Forum has actually listed cloud, data science, big data, and AI as being the most in-demand skills, and that will actually be adopted by 2025. So organizations like Seneca, what they're doing is just phenomenal, because they're really preparing students for the work skills that are needed, that will be needed now and also in the future. If we look at more locally, the Canadian labor market, there was a recent study that showed that 65,000 new IT jobs that are cloud-related technology fields are needed by 2024. That's just around the corner. So, institutions do need to adopt this into the curriculum, and I think the challenge is not just for the new students going into, as undergrad students, but also having the ability to provide the ongoing skills for the even people in current roles that don't have the cloud skills, that are in technical roles, because 70% of all jobs today require some technical skills. And so what Microsoft's doing is we have been working with 30 institutions across Canada, and they're participating in the digital skills program. This is being led by our digital skills lead, Elka Walsh. And so what we're doing as part of this program is really working with institutions to incorporate cloud skills like AI, cybersecurity, cloud data, and so on into the curriculum. And what we need to, I think what institutions really need to think differently about is it's not just the traditional computer science courses that we need to incorporate these cloud-ready skills and digital skills. It's really all programs, whether it's humanities, whether it's the arts, whether it's health sciences or social sciences. I think that students need to start incorporating some of these digital skills into the curriculum. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for educators and faculty to start thinking differently about that. I think the benefit of having creating these custom labs with Cloud Labs is the opportunity to really incorporate that into the curriculum and making some customized labs that would really foster a secure and safe environment and collaborative environment so that students could really collaborate and develop these cloud skills together. And so that's what I think is really needed. I also want to just mention that Seneca is really, Seneca was selected by Microsoft and RBC, the Future Launch Program, as a strategic partner of Microsoft, and became one of the first institutions to deliver Canada-wide Azure fundamentals training and certifications. Seneca, they have trained over 6,000 Canadians, which is phenomenal, and in some cases 200 people at a time. So I think we need more Senecas out there and more institutions to adopt. So if anyone is interested, so I think they're gonna someone's gonna pop in the window or in the chat the information about the Seneca story and the stuff that we've done with Seneca. But if any other institutions are on this call and would be interested in adopting or interested in learning more about the digital skills program, they can either call myself or can reach out to Elka Walsh, and we'll put Elka's contact information there as well. I also want to just mention that Microsoft has a great program called the Microsoft Learning for Educators program. It's a great resource that has some amazing curriculum and learning paths and support for faculty. We'll post that in the IM window as well if you want to just go and explore that. So we're here to support any institutions that would like to go on this journey that Seneca has been on.
Wonderful, wonderful. And that was like a huge impact. So I have to, sort of congratulate Seneca on, achieving that great feat of training, people across Canada for Azure fundamentals and courses. So that is just wonderful. And, so I've put in these links in the chat window about, how Seneca teamed up with Microsoft to drive the digital literacy program, as well as the, Microsoft Learn for Educators resources in the chat window. So feel free to take a look at that. And also I've put in Nancy's and Elka's contact details as well if you would want to join the Canada Digital Skilling Program.
And Emma, just one more thing that I forgot to mention. I think that the training and the labs is amazing. I think the other thing that I love what Seneca is doing is offering the Microsoft certifications to provide students to become more employable and more ready in the market, which I think is phenomenal. So I just wanted to touch on that as well. So kudos to Seneca for and other institutions that are participating in the digital skills program.
Absolutely. So this is great. So so far, we talked about how it is important, and as you mentioned, it's not just for the computer science courses, but it's basically these digital skills are needed for everyone, for every kind of courses. So that opens up a lot of ways towards how these digital skills can be incorporated in all kind of curriculums. So now going one level deeper, I would like to understand from Seneca on, like how did you actually start using Azure? Like what kind of programs did you use? So for example, Azure for Student exists. So can you talk about some of your experience about using Azure for Students, and how did you move forward from using Azure for Students and like coming to the solution which is now production ready?
You know what? Thank you. Thank you for introducing that. You know what? The Azure for Students program, just for those who are new to this program, it essentially gives students an opportunity with a complimentary $100 credit that they can use in the Azure environment. They log into once they sign up for the Azure for Students, they verify themselves that they are a student using their academic credentials. And then they're awarded with $100 credit, which they can use throughout the year and do a deeper dive and put on their exploration hat and take a look at all the offerings that Azure has in the portal. Now the thing with the $100 credit, it gets topped up. Now I want to say topped up that if there are any remaining credits after 1 year, it gets topped up to $100 credit again, as long as you verify that you are still a student. Now, when we are using this Azure for Students in our courses, it has been phenomenal. We've been able to develop labs, develop projects, develop demonstrations for students using this credit. Both faculty or professors as well as the students are able to leverage this $100 credit. Now, one of the opportunities here, or I guess in this case, maybe a challenge, is that we offer more than one course which use Microsoft Azure. We have numerous courses that are using it. And if the student is enrolled in a program where there are numerous courses that are using Azure, that $100 credit might not be sufficient. And to extend it, unfortunately, at this point, we'd have to wait for that 1 year anniversary before we could top up. And this is where our Seneca ITS team was able to help out. So Todd, over to you.
Yeah, that was always a challenge with the Azure for Student, that when they did run out of credit, that we had to extend it to our academic Azure, which was, at the beginning it was by request. So after the first semester it was a few, and after maybe the second semester, if they continued to the second semester, they'd run out of credit. And of course that list grew. And, up until the past semesters where we were, quite a few students had expired the credit. So what we would do is we would just build right at the beginning, the get-go, just create the resources within our academic tenant, and it would provide the resources for these people to continue their studies. And so that's just the way we handle it. That's what it evolved to. And of course, the semesters where we're going to move more so even to use this environment in some cases Spectre as well. But that's where we're at this point in time right now with respect to the using the resources from Azure for Student. And that's just how it evolved to where we are today. Again, it's evolution.
I just want to maybe add a couple of things as well. So although the Azure for Students, the $100 credits are really great for students, but they really were designed for individual personal learning, not necessarily for classroom labs, because it doesn't really offer that collaboration, the opportunity for students to work together. So I think that's the benefit, the true benefit of leveraging a solution like Cloud Labs, is it's purposely driven for classroom labs, and it really provides that secure and safe environment for the learners and for the students. So I think that provides that ability to provide that true experiential learning without, and Todd, I think you had mentioned in there's notifications that you guys set up as well, that so that students can really manage their spend. I thought that was brilliant. So I don't know if you want to chat a little bit more about that, but or maybe David. But I think that is just brilliant that you guys did that, because that's really true, giving those students the true life skills that they're going to need in the workforce, because they need to manage the cloud spend and all that. So I don't know if you want to touch on that.
David, would you like me to explain what I did there?
Sure.
It might overlap with some of the budgeting conversation to come, but basically, what we did was we decided that, at some capacity, as you suggested, that the students need to be responsible for their spending. And to do so, they had options of either, really pushing, and training on students how to use the cost alerts and cost tools within Azure and monitor that on a regular basis, or we set up a budget for them. And that's a choice that we decided to go. That's the road we decided to go down, because it was right in their email that they'd reached certain plateaus. So we created budgets at several different levels. 50. 60, 75, 80, 90, 100, right? Just so they could see how fast. And of course, the triggers are only once, right? As they get the alerts, hit those trigger points, they get sent the alert. Now, when we did that, we decided not just to send it to the student, but we sent it to the chair, the professor, and a few DC team members. So everybody was aware that this trend was happening, and we could sort of, and if they didn't really see it or understand what to do, we could sort of, help them out a bit, right? And again, it was a two-way street. It was to help them understand what's going on. The faculty as well, or the professor could, help them as well. And again, when it did hit their limits, we would have to lock them out, and they would have to, explain what's going on there, because sometimes they just forget to do something or, leave something on. So that's the road we decided to take to help them out.
Wonderful. So that's like a great, take to it. What is the use case of Azure for Students program? So as Nancy mentioned, it's about individuals. So for example, if I'm a student, I would typically get like a lab environment from my institution, and whereas I will use my Azure for Students credits for my own individual learning. So I think that's a great take on how, if we need to plan for scale, plan for collaboration, we need to go beyond Azure for Students. So that's a great take to it. And we talked a bit about budget and cost, and there is also like a comment in the chat about it, that how do we deal with the students who finish their $100 credit. So I would love to hear from Seneca on moving from Azure for Students to the commercial subscriptions, or the general pay as you go, or other kind of Azure subscriptions where there is no limit and it is actually billing. So how did you transition into those kind of subscription group? And also, again, like we need to lock out the students, we understand that, but how did you implement that whole solution with respect to budgeting and keeping that cloud cost predictable, basically?
The few questions in there, so let's break it down. Let's start with the transition. So going to our friend's comment in the chat about how did we deal with students who finished their $100 credit? That is a fantastic question, and you know what, that's happened to us a few times. And just leaning on what Todd has mentioned earlier, our internal IT department prepared an environment for those students who have exhausted their credits and their 1-year anniversary hasn't come up yet. Now, to move forward and say, while our ITS team has been able to provide us with, say, for example, a resource group with certain policies and security configured there so that the students are, working within the sandbox, to be able to extend beyond just a resource group, we looked at other vendors, and this is where Spectra System has come into play with their Cloud Labs product, and that's been phenomenal to date. So what is the Cloud Labs? Well, the Cloud Labs has provided us with some flexibility, being able to scope beyond working within a resource group. For those who are new to Azure, a resource group is a logical container containing all the different services that you may want to create in the portal. Whether you're using scripts to create it or just simply using the graphical user interface. To be able to scope beyond the resource group Say, for example, if you needed to be able to manage users, groups, work with multi-factor authentication, single sign-on. These are things that go beyond just a resource group. You need subscription level access or tenant level access. This is where Cloud Labs is able to accommodate for these type of features and be able to give us that flexibility. So when we are developing projects, labs, assessments, we're able to leverage this product. So going on to your second question, Amit, about what kind of strategies do we use to kind of manage the cost? I wouldn't say control the cost, but more to manage, and how do we kind of keep alerted of what the spend is from our students? A few things. Well, let's look at the assessment side of things. In our assessments, we're building in the requirement to students. So say, for example, one of our projects, we have the students look at use Azure's pricing calculator first and foremost. We have them use the pricing calculator, scope out what is the budget for this project. What happens if I run this project for 5 days without shutting anything down? So the students have an awareness to say, hey, if I run this Azure Bastion and I leave it running for the entire month, I'm going to run out of credits, right? So having them aware of what their budget is, what the budget constraints are, Azure pricing calculator, that gives the students the ability to be able to budget that out and then understand that they want to work within, whatever the cost will be for that project. In our labs and projects, we're building in clear instructions. Delete your resources at the end of your labs and at the end projects. So building that into the assessments, not only including that instruction, but also make it a deliverable. So now we're asking students, hey, not only are you going to take a screenshot of, say, for example, the virtual machine that you've created, but at the we want another screenshot. Show us that you've deleted all the resources from your resource group. So we built that into the deliverables for the student. Some other ways to help manage costs, when the student has finished a project or a lab, we are having them record a video demonstration of that project, as opposed to leaving the resources there and having the instructor come along and look through the assessments when they can. And by that time, those resources, they're still running in the background, right? That's leaving your faucet on, keeping the faucet running. So as you're using it, pay as you go. So we have students record demonstrations of their project, uploading it to a service called Microsoft Stream. So a software as a service provided by the Microsoft there, part of the Microsoft 365 offering. So on top of that, what we also do is we educate our students on how to use ARM templates. What happens here is that students, when they're creating their environment, we're showing them, hey, this is how you could save your work. And so you could deploy this later, redeploy it, just simply by running this template. And by doing that, sometimes, the classes are confined within, say, a 2-hour window. That might not be enough time for the students to complete all their work during class. And of course, they have another scheduled class. They have to move on. They might have other responsibilities and commitments outside of class. So with the ARM templates, students are able to, say, hey, you know what, I deploy this virtual machine, but I'm going to download that so that if I need to pick up from where I left off or set up this environment again, I could simply spin it up with the ARM templates. Now, one step further, so those are the assessment side of piece of control or managing the budget. Another important piece is including in the course learning outcomes. So each of the courses, we have course learning outcomes. These are the outcomes that we expect the students to achieve when they complete this course. We build into the course learning outcomes a cost management piece in there. So as an example, maybe at the end of this course, students need to be able to analyze costs and manage costs so that they can ensure that solutions are developed within budget and industry. Right, so maybe that's one of the one of the course learning outcomes. Once we introduce course learning outcome, now we build an assessment based on that. So we have a budget that we assign to the students. If they meet the budget requirements there, they get the full marks. So say, for example, we allocate 10% of their final grade to budget management or cost management. If they meet that requirement, they get the full 10%. However, if they have overspent, unfortunately, that 10% is no longer available to them. And that way, by introducing this type of weight into the course, this is a phenomenal way for us to be able to make sure that students are really following along with the the budget and cost management strategies that we are sharing in class. Now, moving forward to that, we've adopted Cloud Labs. Now, just going back to the Azure for Students, yes, the $100 is great. Our ITS team has been phenomenal in creating this resource group environment so that students can continue working on their labs when they exceed their $100 credit. Now, when we are, moving towards other type of services where we may need, subscription level access, tenant level access, we need to make sure that we have guardrails in place so that students aren't, Bitcoin mining on the background. They're not, exposing themselves to the environment and, causing a security risk, not only for themselves, but for Seneca. So to have these guardrails and securities in place, this is where Spectra Systems product, Cloud Labs here has been phenomenal in setting up these guardrails. On top of that, they've been able to set up budget alerts. So whenever students have been using their credits, anything above 0, students are notified on a daily basis. This is what you've spent. This is what the credits that are remaining, and that gives the student awareness. It's like, hey, I have to be, cautious. How much cash is in my wallet, right? You don't want it to, disappearing. So on a daily basis, we are reminding them. Not only that, the faculty, the professors are aware. They have a listing of all the students, what their spends are, so that, if something is kind of, outside of what the expectation is, the professor can alert the student and say, hey, what are you running in the background? Is there something that you're leaving behind? Let's investigate that together, and, let's work together and make sure that we are keeping those costs under control. Another great and excellent feature that we have used with Cloud Labs, extending credits. Say, for example, we set up the environment, the budget, say $100. Student has exhausted that. Maybe they had their exploration hat on and they were, doing deep dives in some of the more expensive services, and they may have lost control of their budget. Cloud Labs has been phenomenal in offering us be able to extend their credit. So as the alerts are coming in, when the professor finds out, hey, you're hitting 90% of your usage, let's look at, hey, what other assessments are there that needs to be completed? Do we need to increase your credit by a bit so that we can help you, complete this course and earn a credit? So these are the phenomenal things that Cloud Labs have been offering to us, and it gives us that flexibility to extend beyond resource group and working at a subscription level or even a tenant level type of access.
Wonderful one. That's a great information on how do you manage it in real world. And I love how you added the automation piece, the ARM templates to it, solving the budget challenges in one on the one side, while also educating students about the automation, which is a very important skill when you sort of build at scale, when you manage at scale. So that's a great way to leveraging the Azure capabilities, not just to manage cost as well as to educate students. And with all these budget sort of enablement and education that you're providing to students, I'm pretty sure when they join their organizations, they would be saving a lot of money for their companies in terms of cloud cost. Yeah. So that's great to hear. So moving forward to next items. So like Nancy, let's say if I'm part of a program management in an educational institutes and I want to start adopting to Microsoft Cloud, Azure M365, Power Platform, and so on. So what sort of help do I have available from Microsoft to start my journey to the cloud?
Yeah, great question. So Microsoft, we have many programs and resources to help institutions on their journey to the cloud. I think the best way to get started is to contact your account executive If you don't know who your account executive is, certainly please reach out to me. I'm happy to connect you with the right resources and get you started on that journey. If any institutions, as I mentioned before, are interested in exploring the digital skilling program and incorporating cloud, data, AI, cybersecurity into your curriculum, I would recommend, reach out to me, or again, reach out to Alka, our digital skilling lead, and or even just checking out some of the resources in the Microsoft Learn for Educator website. And if you're interested in the digital student labs, I would say, just reach out to us, and we're happy to schedule a session with our Microsoft Azure Solution Specialist and the Cloud Labs team, and we can support you in exploring that way.
Wonderful, wonderful. And any guidance, David and Todd, you would have for institutions who are starting their journey to the cloud?
David, or shall I go?
Sorry. Yes, you know what? If you are starting the journey to the cloud, I would recommend that you take a look at the Cloud Labs product. Work with the team, find out, what are your needs? What are your needs for your labs, your projects? Find out, what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? And see what Cloud Labs can do for your organization. I listed out a number of different benefits here, and one of the things with the Cloud Labs is it does have a portal where you, as a professor, or maybe you have a lab technologist who is managing all the different courses, you're able to easily import students through the portal, so that if a new student is enrolled in your course, you could simply just add the student in there, and then send alerts to the students so that they can provision their login account for the portal. So I would recommend looking at having a discussion with Cloud Labs, find out how can this product be used for your situation. So I think, just leaning on one of the questions, I think from Alex asking about multi-factor authentication, how do you manage these licenses in your courses? So Alex, this sounds like possibly a custom solution. So if that's the case, Spectra Systems might be able to leverage the Cloud Labs for those type of use cases.
Perfect. Yeah, so there are like some more questions about as well, like about the Cloud Labs. So I can quickly give like a 2 minutes sort of overview about what Cloud Labs is and what it does. So it's a hands-on lab platform in a nutshell. It's a SaaS-based platform where you can leverage one of the existing labs that we have built around, for example, Azure courses, AZ900, Azure Administrator, Developer, and so on, Power Platform, secure, cyber security, ethical hacking. So all those, there's a tons of courses which are pre-built, which are ready to use. You just have to subscribe to it, and you will get like a full-fledged environment included with Azure accounts and permissions, etc. So that's like one of the use cases where you just get like a lab environment that is already available based on a standard course curriculum. Whereas if institution wants, they can also like build their own custom labs. As David mentioned, like if you're running, like, for example, MFA license, Cloud Labs could give you accounts with required Microsoft 365 licenses, which could last over months, so that you can complete the entire, learning process without sort of, worrying about any of the permissions at tenant level, global administrator permissions, and so on. So Cloud Labs is a SaaS solution which integrates with, Microsoft Cloud Platform, all Azure Office 365 and all of that, which you could use to sort of, manage and distribute the lab environments at scale while keeping all the cloud cost predictable. So there are some questions around that. So if you need to get started with Cloud Labs, you can reach out to us, and we'll be happy to do like a required demo and sort of understand your use cases and see how we could help you move forward. And along with that, like we provide like practice tests, virtual computers or custom labs or hackathons, like in infrastructure resources for hackathons and so on as well. So that it's a separate product. So just for everyone's clarification, Cloud Labs is a SaaS service which integrates with Microsoft Azure platform to enable hands-on learning experiences for students at scale. So now looking at some of the questions, and so some of the Cloud Labs related questions I hope are answered now with that, a bit of brief. So interesting question. So David, you mentioned about how you would ask students to record like a video about their completion of the course, and that way it acts as a proof. So there's a question about what would the student do if they missed recording some part of the solution and everything is deleted now? How do they prove back that, hey, I did everything without having to go through reconfiguring, reinventing the wheel basically?
I want to say that would be at the discretion of the professor. So if the professor has seen the student in class working on the assessment, knows that the student has developed a full-fledged solution, then it would be at the discretion of the professor to decide, well, have you met the course learning outcomes? Have you shown or demonstrated that maybe you know how to create a virtual machine? Whether you haven't, maybe you haven't set up the correct permissions, maybe you had a public IP address, that the professor would use discretion for that. So one other strategy that you may want to consider is using the ARM templates. So if you do deploy an environment and you know that it takes quite a bit of time to do that, look into the ARM templates and see if you can script deploying that environment again.
Perfect. And to add to that, like I would like to, also talk about one of the Cloud Apps capability that we have built recently, and we are sort of expanding on that, which is about, validating if a student completed their, task correctly or not. Like, so the Cloud Labs platform will actually go and verify if the required goal is met or not, and keep like an artifact of it, which could be like a log, maybe like a log entry. Okay, the VM was created with the required resources. Here is the log entry for that, which sort of could act as like a proof of work. So basically, so that's also like coming up, and we are working with many institutions on that with respect to how we can incorporate like an evaluation and grading in the platform, where we also keep the audit trail about how it was evaluated. So that's great to hear. So I don't see any pending questions at the moment. So everyone, like we have 5 minutes remaining for this wonderful discussion. So please do use this, and do share your thoughts in the chat. And if you have any questions, please do feel free to use the chat box. So there is a question about, can I have like insight on how evaluation is done in Cloud Lab? So I can address that from a platform perspective, how we do it in Cloud Labs. Like Todd or David, do you want to add anything to that before I get into it?
Please go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, so in Cloud Labs, how we do is, for example, let's say in one of the Azure course, Azure fundamentals, one of the goal is to create a virtual machine in a specific virtual network with required configurations. So what we do is, because these are these are the courses which are governed by specific labs. It's not like open-ended thing. You have to do things in certain way to basically complete the lab successfully. So what we do is we integrate with the Azure REST APIs, and at scale we sort of go and validate each student's environment. So basically we would call each student's environment APIs, get the information with respect to what they have done, and store that in a repository where we can keep it as artifact, and sort of show to the student as well that, hey, you have completed these things and they are validated. And in any time, if they are not validated, if they have not done it correctly, the platform can also show them, hey, you have created the virtual machine, but you missed doing this particular configuration that you may want to go back and do and try to run the check again. So it is very specific to the scenario, and it can be implemented in a custom lab option as well. So the next question I see here from Jason is, question to Seneca: how do you manage licenses for lab accounts?
Jason, that's a great idea, great question. And you know what, that's where we lean on Cloud Labs to manage those licenses for us. So what happens is with the Cloud Labs product, when we import the students into the Cloud Labs portal, 30 students, 40 students, you could scale it to what your needs are. What happens is that the student will receive an email. The email will show them instructions on how to provision their login account. So the account is separate from their academic login account. We kind of term it ODL account, on-demand lab account, and it has a unique identifier for every single student. So each student, when they're logging into the Azure portal, they're using a unique credentials. We could also set up a MFA as well to make sure that it's very secured in terms of the login. But that's how we do manage the accounts there.
Perfect. There's another question about if we are using Cloud Labs, do we need to get our own Azure account? So as David mentioned, with Cloud Labs, there is basically two identities. You have your own academic identity, which is your EDU account, which is licensed with required A3 or A5 license. Whereas with Cloud Labs, we manage like a separate set of tenants and subscriptions at scale, where we basically provide sandbox accounts, sandbox tenants to students, and depending on how many labs we need at a time, we like plan out to have like required number of sandboxes in advance. So simple answer, no, you do not need your own Azure accounts if you need to use Cloud Labs. Cloud Labs can supply you that as well. However, if you do have your own Azure accounts, you can bring that as well potentially for your scenarios if needed. So we have 2 minutes left, and I see a lot of great questions so far. So before we wrap up for the day, any departing thoughts from Seneca and Microsoft on any best practices to share?
I have one. So I just want to close by saying I just want to thank both Cloud Labs and Seneca for your partnership and also for your leadership. Seneca, as a parent of 2 high school students, I feel very optimistic of the education that they're going to be having in the future with solutions and the thought leadership that you're having in terms of incorporating the type of cloud technology that is so desperately needed, and incorporating that into the curriculum. So thank you both for your partnership and your leadership on helping students coast to coast. So thank you.
Absolutely, and I would like to top up on that. Thanks a lot to all of you for giving out your valuable time here and sharing your thoughts. I'm pretty sure it was helpful. I can see like comments as well that when with this meeting recording will be shared. We will be sharing the meeting recording as well, and you could share it with the other instructors as well, so that they could leverage the discussions that happened here and be prepared for cloud adoption. So we will be sharing the recording link, and there's one more question. We'll quickly take it. It's about, can we implement bring your own device for students using Azure Labs? So David or Todd, do you want to take that? Bring your own device to scenarios for students. So basically, like students can bring their own devices to use the Azure infrastructure or the lab infrastructure without having to
okay.
rely on
Thank you for the clarity. Yeah, absolutely. And we have students who do that right now while we use virtualized solutions. Students do bring their own device to perform some of the their labs or their assessments. But also at Seneca, well, we are based out of the Newnham campus. I want to say that's the home campus. For Seneca, we have numerous computers and lab stations there available for the students. So if they don't have laptops, we have all these equipment available for the student. And because we are working in the cloud, what do you need? Just internet connection and a machine with a browser. So that's one of the things that's fantastic with the Azure product.
Perfect. So that's a great point to wrap up on that. You can bring your own devices or use your existing devices. Cloud is there for you. So I would like to thank again David, Nancy, and Todd for your time, and I'm pretty sure it was helpful. And I think that's all for today.